Have you ever wondered what happens when angels abandon their stations? Long before the tales of Moses and David, long before the floodwaters rose to cleanse a corrupted earth, there was a moment when heaven itself cracked open, and what spilled through wasn't mercy, but ruin. In the hidden pages of the Book of Enoch, a solitary figure stands between two worlds, a man so steadfast in faith that death itself could not claim him. Instead, Enoch was carried upward into realms no human had ever seen to bear witness to a secret rebellion. These celestial watchers were sent to guard and guide humanity with benevolence, but gazing upon mortals became an obsession. What began as duty twisted into desire, and they crossed boundaries never meant to be crossed. They fell not from grace, but into longing, and from that longing came the Nephilim, giants of untold strength, walking the earth like living weapons. Their hunger devoured fields and families. Their violence spread like a plague. Creation groaned beneath their footsteps, and the earth wept for mercy. Amid this chaos, Enoch, neither warrior nor king, stood firm. Summoned by the divine, he descended from the heights of heaven to confront the very beings who had defied their maker. With a voice both gentle and unyielding, he delivered a verdict they could not ignore. You will not be forgiven. He spoke not to kings or priests, but to angels, reminding them that duty is sacred and that even the highest must bow to divine law. But his mission was more than judgment. Enoch was shown the inner workings of the cosmos, palaces of light threaded with fire, vast chasms of shadow, fields of stars that spun like jeweled wheels. He walked through roaring winds and silent darkness, glimpsing mysteries of heaven and earth. Each vision pressed upon him the fragile line that separates grace from destruction, reminding him and us that knowledge without wisdom can become a weapon as sharp as any sword. When Enoch returned, he carried with him a warning that transcends time. His story is not mere mythology, but a mirror reflecting our own struggles with pride, temptation, and the intoxication of forbidden knowledge. The watchers who fell remind us that even the divine can be corrupted by the heart's desires. Their fate echoes our own. Every moment we are tempted to overreach, to taste what was never meant for us, we risk our own ruin. And yet, there is hope in Enoch's example. He shows that unwavering faith can bridge worlds, that a single righteous voice can stand against the tide of rebellion. His journey teaches us that true wisdom lies not in seeing all that is hidden, but in knowing when to remain faithful to what is sacred. For in the end, the greatest battle is not fought with swords or spells, but within the heart. As we peer into this ancient account of angels and giants, we must ask ourselves, what secrets lie just beyond our sight, and are we prepared for the truths we might uncover? The tale of the Watchers is a cautionary chronicle urging us to walk humbly even when we dare to gaze at the heavens. In Enoch's footsteps, we learn that some doors, once opened, can never be closed, and that some visions, once seen, change us forever. If you're fascinated by hidden mysteries and the forces that shape our world, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Biblical Journey. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an exploration into forgotten stories and buried truths. Join our community of truth seekers and embark on each new adventure with us, because some revelations are too powerful to stay hidden. After the blood covenant was sealed on the slopes of Mount Hermon, a heavy silence fell upon the watchers. The air itself seemed to shudder, as if the very fabric of creation lamented what had transpired. For these 200 once glorious beings had torn themselves from their appointed posts, abandoning their celestial vigil for the fleeting intoxication of flesh. They descended with thunderous wings, their footsteps echoing across the valleys, and with each footfall the earth quaked in dread anticipation of the chaos to come. When they first beheld the beauty of mortal women, their hearts, temples of divine purpose, were defiled by a single forbidden spark: desire. In that moment they cast aside their purity. Samyaza, their leader, stood at the forefront, his eyes alight with both conviction and rebellion. His voice, once a beacon of righteousness, now carried the fury of a fallen star. "We were sent as watchers," he proclaimed, "but we are born to shape destiny itself." And so they took wives, binding heaven and earth with deeds that would echo through eternity. From these unions sprang the Nephilim, titans of unmatched strength, towering above men as living mountains. Their laughter was like the roar of storms, their stride akin to the march of armies. Where they tread, forests withered, rivers shifted their courses, and even the tallest mountains bowed before their might. They carved empires in a single breath, their power unchecked, their will absolute. But their hearts were hollow, for they knew neither the humility of man nor the mercy of angels. As the Nephilim grew in number and cruelty, the world descended into a nightmare of violence. Villages were razed at dusk. Entire families vanished beneath the monstrous shadow of these giants. Wars ignited like wildfires, and the earth ran red with blood. Yet their greatest crime was yet unseen, the forbidden arts they learned from their fallen progenitors. Under the tutelage of the Watchers, they forged weapons capable of sundering mountains, brewed elixirs that twisted flesh and soul, and decoded the secrets of the cosmos, not to honor their creator, but to assert dominion over all creation. Humankind, once content in simple toil, was now seduced by this swift path to power. Farmers traded plows for swords, scholars forsook truth for arcane sorcery. Cities rose on foundations of fear, their walls inscribed with runes of devastation. Priests of old struggled in vain to recall their brethren to faith, but their voices were lost in the clamoring frenzy of ambition. What had been a tapestry of harmony unraveled into a tapestry of discord. Meanwhile, in the silent courts of heaven, Enoch stood as the lone intercessor between Creator and creation. His purity set him apart. His devotion marked him as worthy to traverse realms that no mortal should tread. As he gazed upon the world below, his heart cracked with sorrow. He saw the rivers choked with the lifeblood of the innocent. He saw the bright eyes of children dull with fear. And he understood that this rebellion threatened to rend the very soul of the cosmos. Moved by compassion, Enoch ascended once more into the Empyrean heights. There he beheld the throne of glory, surrounded by archangels whose countenances shone like the dawn. Yet even among their radiant presence, a profound melancholy had settled. For the Creator, witness to the unfolding carnage on earth, carried in his heart both the weight of justice and the depth of mercy. A voice, neither thunder nor whisper, but something beyond mortal understanding, spoke. "Enoch, son of Jared, you have seen what no man must endure. You have walked with angels and beheld the abyss they have opened. Return to the earth and proclaim my decree. For the time of reckoning draws near, and the rebellion of the Watchers must be addressed." With these words, Enoch's task was laid bare. He would descend once more, bearing a warning that would shake the foundations of the world. But he knew that even divine warning might not temper the hardened hearts of the fallen. For where pride reigns, words of humility are but echoes lost on the wind. Back on Earth, rumors of a stranger began to circulate among scattered survivors. They spoke of a man whose eyes burned with celestial fire, whose voice carried both authority and compassion. He wandered through shattered cities and battle-scarred plains, delivering fragments of the divine message. Repent, or be swept away by the coming storm. Some heeded his words, finding solace in the promise of mercy. Others scoffed, their faith eroded by the constant drumbeat of war. As Enoch journeyed, the fabric of the natural world unraveled further. By night, the heavens glittered with unnatural lights, sparks of celestial energies unleashed by the fallen. By day, winds howled through the desolation, carrying the lament of the earth herself. Even the animals turned feral, driven mad by the scent of blood and the hum of arcane forces. Yet amid the desolation, small sparks of hope endured. Hidden enclaves of the righteous tended to one another in secret groves. Children, unacquainted with the arrogance of giants, found laughter in games beneath the sheltering branches. In these stubborn embers of life, Enoch saw the promise of renewal. Still, the rebellion demanded its due. The Watchers, entrenched in their strongholds of stone and sorcery, prepared for the inevitable clash. Their hearts, once brimming with pride, now simmered with defiance. They believed themselves beyond reach, champions of a new order where might and knowledge reigned supreme. But the decree of heaven is unyielding. As the cycles of sun and moon marched onward, the hour of judgment drew inexorably closer. Enoch, heir to truths no mortal should bear, stood at the threshold of destiny, the bridge between a fallen world and the just wrath of its maker. The fate of all creation hung in the balance, waiting to see whether mercy could prevail over the darkest pride or whether the earth would be reborn in flame and shadow. The earth trembled under the footsteps of the Nephilim. Wherever they roamed, the air itself seemed to crackle with violent expectancy, as though creation itself feared their approach. Their shadows stretched like dark fingers across the land, blotting out the sun in valleys and cleaving daylight from dawn. On the jagged peaks they claimed as thrones, they roared in triumph. In the lowlands they crushed all resistance beneath boots the size of shields. No fortress could hold, no river could stand against their tide. Their hunger was insatiable, a bottomless void that devoured grain fields in a single night and emptied granaries with a single sweep of their arms. Families huddled in caverns, their faces illuminated only by the trembling glow of dying fires. Mothers clutched children so small they might slip through a giant's fingers. Fathers sharpened stolen blades against river stones, and elders whispered old prayers into the darkness, prayers no longer answered. The giant's laughter echoed like rolling thunder, mocking every desperate plea. When a child dared to cry, the ground shook, as though the cliffs themselves wept in sorrow. Even the stones of the earth grew weary of the carnage, cracking under the weight of so much death. Yet the Nephilim did not stop at mere destruction. They raised mock citadels of bone and steel, spires that pierced the sky like accusatory fingers. In these grotesque courts, they crowned themselves sovereigns of a shattered world. They enacted brutal games of supremacy, pitting brother against brother in contests so savage that the rivers ran red for leagues. Each contest was a cruel parody of the unity the Watchers had once sworn to uphold. Where once divine fellowship had flourished, now only jealousy and rage reigned. When one giant fell, the victor feasted upon the fallen's flesh, sealing his triumph with the most primal of rituals. As the citadels rose, so did the darkness within men's hearts. Among the survivors, a new breed of human emerged, warriors hardened by loss, sorcerers corrupted by the forbidden arts taught by the fallen angels. Some carved runes into their arms, believing that power bled from the giants would flow through their veins. Others sought refuge in caverns so deep they forgot the sky. Yet even in their desperation, they could not drink deeply enough from the well of cruelty. The Nephilim had sown the seeds of ruin, and humanity, starved of hope, was eager to reap the harvest. High above, in the silent expanse of heaven, the balance tipped toward irreversible decay. The angels, aghast at the outcome of their work, cringed at the walls of smoke and bone rising across the earth. But the decree had been spoken. The corruption was complete, and only an act of pure justice could restore the sanctity of creation. The Creator's heart, heavy with sorrow, turned once more to the one man who walked untouched by the taint, Enoch. Enoch, whose steps once echoed in palaces of crystal light, now trod upon fields of ruin. His cloak, woven from threads of divine mercy, billowed like a banner of judgment as he approached the gates of the greatest Nephilim stronghold. There, beneath a sky choked with ash, he paused. Beyond the heavy doors, the tyrants feasted upon stolen loot and trembled at no sound but their own arrogance. But the instant Enoch's foot touched the threshold, the feast fell silent. Platters clattered. Goblets slipped from hands. A hush, pregnant with dread, spread like a pall over the assembly. He did not raise his voice. He did not brandish a weapon. His words fell soft, yet they carried the weight of eternity. You were born of angels, fashioned for worship. You have instead become architects of desolation. Your legacy will be swept away like dust on the wind. Your name shall be forgotten, your offspring extinguished, and you yourselves cast down until the day of ultimate reckoning. With each phrase, the walls shuddered as though they dared to deny the power of that simple decree. But even stones must obey the voice of the Almighty. Cries erupted first low, then rising into wails that rent the sky. The Nephilim sank to their knees, their once proud forms shaking like leaves in a storm. They begged, they pleaded. Some offered tribute, others promised fealty. A few wept genuine tears, for in that moment they glimpsed the abyss they had created and understood the depth of their betrayal. But mercy had already turned to resolve. The sentence was final. When Enoch departed, the ground heaved open beneath him. Great chasms yawned in the earth, swallowing citadels and armies alike. Screams of titans echoed for moments before silence claimed the void. Roots and vines crimson with the pulse of renewed life crept across the ruins, sealing tombs that had once basked in tyranny. The sky, relieved of its oppressive burdens, brightened with a fragile hope. Stars returned to their appointed places, and the moon cast a gentle glow over a world cleansed by painful necessity. In the aftermath, survivors emerged blinking into a changed dawn. The giants were gone, and with them the worst of humankind's horrors. But the memory of their rule lingered etched into scars on the land and into the hearts of those who remained. Enoch, his mission complete, vanished into legend. Some say he walks still, tending to the wounds of a fragile earth. Others believe he rests in a realm beyond time, awaiting the final summons. Yet wherever he stands, his warning echoes through every whisper of wind and rustle of leaves. That power without purpose is poison, and that the gravest sin is to forget one's place in the grand tapestry of creation. Thus ends the tale of the Nephilim's terror, and with it begins the slow, arduous rebirth of a world once lost. The fields will be sown again, children will laugh once more, and priests will offer fresh prayers beneath the cleansing sky. But the legacy of the Watchers and the fate of those who dared to claim heaven's gifts for themselves remains a solemn testament to the peril of pride. For in every generation there dwells a choice, to honor the light from which we were forged or to descend into the shadow of our own making. When Enoch's solemn proclamation faded on the wind, the world itself seemed to pause in hushed anticipation. The roars of giants, the cries of the oppressed, the rustle of every leaf in every forest fell silent as if creation held its breath. In that perfect stillness, a presence stirred ancient, boundless, luminous, and Enoch felt himself drawn upward by an invisible hand, gentle yet irresistible. He did not struggle. He did not cry out. He simply let go, surrendering to the divine current that bore him heavenward. Higher and higher he ascended, leaving behind the dust and carnage of earth. The hills and valleys shrank until they were but distant memories, and the air itself grew fragrant with the scent of unseen blossoms. As he pierced the veil of sky, he passed through a realm where clouds themselves seemed alive, breathing softly beneath his feet. Here the winds slept in great silver cocoons, waiting for the command to sweep across the world below. He lingered for a moment, knowing that each heaven held its own wonders and trials. In the second heaven, he found himself among gleaming towers of crystal light, where angels in flowing garments tended to the patterns of the stars. They paused in their eternal labor to gaze upon him with reverence, as though welcoming a long-absent guest. Their voices merged in a song without words, a melody of pure devotion that resonated through his bones. Enoch bowed his head, overwhelmed by the harmony of souls united in praise. Beyond them lay the third heaven, where the tree of life stretched its branches through endless twilight. Its leaves were like emerald flames, and its fruit glowed with an inner fire. Beneath its boughs sat patriarchs and prophets, their eyes alight with wisdom. They turned toward Enoch and offered him cakes of ambrosia, sustenance for a journey unlike any other. He ate in silence, feeling the fruit's power kindle understanding in his mind, knowledge of things hidden from mortal thought, yet imparted without burden. The fourth heaven revealed its own marvels, vast halls where the sun and moon were housed in golden oratories. Great angelic custodians guided their courses on jeweled tracks, not by the mechanics of mortal science, but by the sacred law of the Creator's will. Each orbit was a prayer, each phase a testament to the divine balance. Enoch watched as dawn and dusk were woven here, understanding at last that every sunrise carried the echo of God's promise. In the fifth and sixth heavens, he encountered the faithful watchers, beings of pure radiance who had never faltered in their vigil. They stood in rows like living pillars of light, their faces serene and aglow. Enoch heard their whispered recitations of the divine names, each syllable reverberating through his soul. It was as if the very air quivered with holiness, and he found himself repeating those sacred sounds in a voice that was no longer wholly his own. Then came the seventh heaven, and no word can capture the moment he beheld the throne. It blazed with unquenchable fire, a center of pure being that outshone all the stars. Around it, angels stood in ranks, seraphim with wings that trembled like thunderclouds, cherubim whose eyes were the depths of eternity. They forgot him not, but they bowed as one before the majesty that transcended even their exalted existence. Enoch remained standing, a lone figure in the presence of the infinite. And in that stillness he heard not a voice, but a knowing conveyed directly into his heart. It was the language of all things, the silent dialogue between creation and Creator. In that moment he saw how the stars were counted, each one a testament to divine order. He saw how souls were weighed, the righteous upheld like pillars of light, the wicked cast like chaff upon the wind. He saw how time itself bent and folded at the will of the one who existed beyond all epochs. Before him hovered the Book of Life, its pages etched in letters of fire. Enoch reached out, and each name he touched shimmered with the promise of eternity or the warning of judgment. He understood that for every spirit recorded there lay a path of choices measured not by years but by the weight of the heart's intention. The righteous names glowed like beacons, guiding the faithful through dark valleys. The names of the fallen flickered and dimmed, reminders that even the brightest lights can fade. Transformed by these revelations, Enoch felt the mantle of a scribe settle upon his shoulders. He was no longer merely man, he was a witness to secrets that even angels coveted, a messenger entrusted with the divine decree. In his mind he heard the echoes of prophecies yet unwritten, visions of ages to come, times of renewal, of judgment, of mercy beyond understanding. Though he stood before the throne, Enoch's heart did not swell with pride. He knew his place, a humble servant, a voice for the word that transcends speech. And in that humility, he found true exaltation. To serve the eternal purpose is to partake in its glory. Then, as gently as he had been summoned, Enoch began his descent back to the world of shadows and storms. With each step, he carried a fragment of the heavens, a seed of hope to plant in barren soil, a spark of light to kindle in weary hearts. The realms through which he passed greeted him with renewed song, as though rejoicing that the human race might yet bear witness to divine mystery. When his feet touched earth once more, the winds stirred, the clouds sighed, and the vast tapestry of creation resumed its chorus. But a quiet difference lingered in the air, subtle yet profound, a reminder that behind every breath, every heartbeat, every whisper, there lies a presence beyond imagining. And wherever Enoch walked, that presence walked with him, guiding each footstep toward the unfolding chapters of a story still being written in the Book of Life. High above the highest reaches of creation, where silent stars flicker like distant watchfires in an endless sky, Enoch found himself standing before a presence so vast that language itself trembled in its shadow. The air shimmered with unveiled power, not the kind that breaks worlds, but the kind that binds them together in a tapestry of purpose. Here, where time loosened its grip and space folded into light, the mortal pilgrim paused. His heart, still beating with the rhythm of earth, took in the scene with eyes wide, for the throne before him outshone every sun he had ever known. Enoch had ascended to witness mysteries hidden from human eyes, the chambers of the first heaven, where winds slept in crystalline stillness, the courts of the second, where angels wove the song of stars into living patterns. He had walked amid the tree of life, its branches ablaze with emerald fire, and he had seen the orbits of moon and sun guided by unseen hands. But nothing in those revelations compared to the purpose that now spread before him like an ocean of light. "You shall sit among my angels," came the voice, less a sound than a knowing that filled every fiber of his being. "You shall write all that you see, for the generations of men and for the judgment of the hosts of heaven." No thunderclap accompanied the command. No scroll was unrolled. Instead, the moment itself became a covenant, etched into the depths of Enoch's soul. He felt a transformation ripple through him, as though his very flesh had been rewoven into something more enduring than time, yet still bound by the limits of human mortality. In that instant, he was no longer merely Enoch the man. An ancient name, older than the stars that spun overhead, was placed upon his lips. Medatron. Even the angels, guardians of glory and fire, shuddered at its utterance, for it carried both authority and intimacy with the divine. Medatron, scribe of God voice behind the veil. With that name he was consecrated, lifted from the ranks of those who observe to the rare fellowship of those who record. Beside the throne he stood, quill poised, heart open, ready to inscribe the unfolding chapters of destiny. The first vision granted to him revealed the prisons of the Watchers. Enoch, now Medatron, knelt at the edge of yawning chasms sunk deep within a mountain older than memory. Chains of divine fire coiled around celestial limbs, forging shackles no anguish could undo. In the gloom, those fallen beings, once pure in purpose, cried out, their voices echoing with regret so profound it scorched the air. "Release us," they pleaded. "We repent." But mercy had been exhausted. The sentence was final. Here in these silent pits, time itself paused, suspending their immortal suffering until the day of judgment would finally close their saga. From those depths, he was led next to the portals of future ages. He saw wars that would sweep across continents, armies clashing beneath blood-red skies, banners torn by the winds of ambition. He beheld citadels reduced to rubble, the cries of the righteous crushed beneath the march of tyrants. And still, he wrote, every name, every fortress, every lament was recorded in the ledger of eternity, for knowledge unborn must not plead ignorance. Then came the deluge, the flood that would wash the world clean. He watched as fountains of the deep cracked the earth's crust, unleashing torrents that overwhelmed mountains and plains alike. The faithful, huddled within wooden confines, endured the wrath of water until the rain ceased and a new dawn broke upon a newborn horizon. In that vision, he saw hope entwined with judgment and mercy, riding the same waves that brought destruction. and he traced each moment with fervor, knowing that remembrance is the altar upon which mercy is sustained. His quill never rested as he witnessed the coming of the Savior, a figure conceived in humility, born beneath starlight in a manger, destined to stand between heaven and earth. He saw the path of that man of sorrows, each step echoing with the weight of redemption yet before him. He marked the betrayals, the miracles, the final offering upon a hill outside a city of stone. And in his heart, Medatron felt the pang of sorrow and triumph intertwined, for in that sacrifice lay the promise of restoration, an echo of the covenant he himself had sworn to record. The scenes of final judgment unfolded in solemn procession, the righteous rising like the first light of morning, their names gleaming like stars, the wicked cast into the void, their names erased from the book of life. A hush fell across heaven as the trumpet summoned all creation to account. Even the angels who had stood in radiant ranks before the throne bowed their heads as the last syllables of the ancient decree passed from Enoch's quill. Throughout these revelations, Medatron remained steadfast not because he wielded divine power, but because he embraced the burden of obedience. His transformation was not a transference of might, but a consecration of trust. He possessed no divine spark that would render him invulnerable. He carried only a mortal heart consecrated to a sacred covenant, that no truth would perish, no secret remain sealed, no generation stand unaware of the unfolding tapestry of justice and mercy. And then, as suddenly as he had been called, Medatron's work was shrouded in silence. The throne's brilliance receded, the corridors of light dimmed, and the heavens folded gently away. His writing volumes, inscribed with the rise and fall of mankind and angels alike, were entrusted to hide within the fabric of time. Scrolls of parchment and memory sank beneath centuries of dust. Libraries of kings and temples held secrets too potent to share. The scribe of God, faded from mortal memory, remembered only in fleeting whispers and the faintest of echoes. For thousands of years, his chronicle lay buried. Empires rose and fell, prophets came and went, the world marched onward beneath changing skies. The parchment that bore the names of kings, the sins of the fallen, and the promise of final redemption lay hidden, lost amid shifting sands and the vicissitudes of human hands. Yet the divine covenant endured. Time, the very medium Medatron had once traversed, preserved the integrity of his testimony even as memory dimmed. And now, in this season of rediscovery, perhaps his words are surfacing for us. Perhaps those chronicles, long concealed, were meant to awaken something in our souls, a resolve to heed the whispers of conscience, a willingness to record our own witness to justice and compassion, a readiness to stand as custodians of truth in an age that forgets so easily. The twist of Enoch's story of how a quiet man became the keeper of heaven's record echoes still as an invitation. That each of us, in humility and obedience, might take up our own quills and ensure the legacy of mercy outlasts every storm. For in the silence of heaven he learned that true authority lies not in force, but in faithful bearing of witness. His transformation speaks to the potential nestled within every heart, that obedience may confer a stature higher than thrones, that trust may bridge the gulf between human frailty and divine purpose, and that the most enduring power is that of a soul aligned with the unfolding decree of grace. And so, as his writings re-emerge, let us listen. Let us remember. Let us record our own chapter in the grand narrative so that no generation, no matter how distant, may ever say, "I didn't know." The earth trembled beneath the weight of its own sins. Warnings had echoed across the ages, prophecies whispered by prophets, visions granted to dreamers, and the solemn words declared by Enoch himself. Yet the blood of the innocent still seeped into the soil. The Nephilim, towering above every man and beast, thundered across the plains with arrogant laughter, convinced themselves to be gods in flesh. Their war cries shattered mountain passes, their monstrous silhouettes blotted out the sun. Meanwhile, high on jagged peaks where once they stood as watchers, the fallen angels wept. They beheld the havoc their offspring wrought, the desecration of forests and temples, the bondage of human hearts to fear and ruin. In that moment, regret burned in their breast, but heaven did not weep. A hush fell over the cosmos as the Most High moved with inexorable purpose. From the courts of eternity came the summons of the archangels. Michael, resplendent commander of righteousness, his sword blazing with holy resolve. Gabriel, courier of truth, whose trumpet carries the promise of divine justice. Raphael, gentle healer, whose touch can mend even the deepest wound of the soul. And Uriel, guardian of the sacred flame, whose light reveals what shadows seek to hide. No entreaty was offered, no further warning given. With voices that shook the pillars of creation, they received a single, unalterable decree. Bind the watchers where no mortal foot may tread, open the primordial pits, and cleanse the world with waters born of mercy and wrath. Down they descended, a host of brilliant avatars blazing trails across the sky. In their hands they bore chains forged from the essence of pure fire chains that could not be broken by pride nor bent by tears of regret. With unwavering solemnity they confronted the fallen angels atop their desolate mountains. There were no pleas, no bargains. The chains coiled around immortal limbs, shackles bit into celestial flesh. One by one the watchers were sealed away in Tartarus, a cavern of utter darkness beneath the unyielding crust of the world. Time itself held its breath as each immortal spirit was cast into silent depths, left to dwell in perpetual stillness until the final trumpet heralds the great day. While the fallen lingered in their subterranean prison, the Nephilim tasted the full brunt of heaven's judgment. Michael's sword carved paths of light through their grotesque legions. Gabriel's horn summoned tempests that stripped flesh from bone. Raphael's balm found no comfort there, wounds only multiplied under divine decree. And then came the waters, rain unceasing, rivers swelling beyond their banks, seas leaping from their shores in a furious embrace of the land. Villages that once stood proud were washed into memory. Temples of stone and timber crumbled beneath the relentless surge. Some beasts turned to floating carcasses. Some giants met blade and famine before the deluge. But the majority met their end in the cleansing flood, swept away as if they were nothing more than driftwood in a tempest's grasp. Enoch stood upon a solitary peak, robes drenched by the first heavy drops of rain. He watched the tapestry of judgment unfold with a heart weighed in sorrow rather than triumph. Each cry of the drowned, each thunderous roar of breaking earth reverberated through his very soul. He remembered his charge, to record these events in the sacred ledger of heaven. His quill never paused, even as tears mingled with ink upon the scroll. For he knew that justice, though righteous, leaves behind ashes that smolder with the pain of loss. And though the Nephilim had sown terror, innumerable innocents perished alongside them, fathers who stood their ground, mothers who sheltered their young, entire communities swallowed by waters swift and cruel. When at last the rain ceased, a profound stillness blanketed the world. The rivers receded to reveal lands laid bare. Groves once lush now stood as skeletons of wood and stone. Yet amid the devastation sprouted faint buds of new life, tender shoots pushing through mud, birdsong breaking the heavy silence. Survivors emerged from hidden caverns, blinking into a world washed clean, yet forever altered. They lifted their voices in laments that slowly evolved into prayers of gratitude. Enoch, his task complete, lowered his scroll and raised his gaze to the sky. Though the world had been reborn in tears and ruin, hope flickered like a distant star, beckoning a new beginning. And so, divine judgment fell as a bell tolling before the storm's end. It was neither vengeance nor caprice, but the necessary cleansing wrought by a merciful yet sovereign hand. In the aftermath, the living inherited a land baptized by fire and flood, charged with the solemn promise never again to forget the cost of rebellion. For even the most just judgment leaves behind echoes of sorrow, and in those echoes lies the seed of compassion, guiding humanity toward a future shaped not by terror, but by the lessons carved into the bedrock of a once broken world. Enoch stood upon a windswept hill. The world hushed around him as if it too waited with bated breath. The thunderous deluge had receded, leaving behind a tapestry of ruin and raw earth stumps where forest once flourished, crumbled altars of stone, and fields turned slick with mud. He closed his eyes, recalling the faces of both angel and giant, each consumed by the judgment they had unleashed. Yet his heart knew the earth's wound would not heal by wrath alone. In that mournful stillness, a new vision came unbidden. Great rivers surging beyond their banks, tidal walls of water rising against stubborn mountains. He felt the spray upon his face, tasted the salt on his lips, though the rain had long since ceased. Before him unfurled the shape of a vast ark, its timbers sealed against wind and tide, its hold filled with creatures of every kind, pairs of every feathered songbird, every scuttling insect, every gentle beast that once called the garden home. Each life was precious, cradled in wood that would drift upon relentless waves until mercy granted new shores. And through the curtain of those waters, Enoch beheld a solitary figure, a man whose eyes shone with resolute kindness and unshakable faith. His garments were simple, his hands calloused by labor, yet his face bore the quiet radiance of hope unwavering. Enoch knew him then as Noah, descendant of Seth, grandson of Enoch, great-grandson of Enoch himself. It was through this humble man that the promise of renewal would find its vessel. The storm of cleansing would spare him, that life might spring anew from his lineage. The vision deepened, revealing scenes of preparation. Noah raising his hammer under a sun already heavy with portent. His family gathering provisions, bead by bead of oil and grain. The animals steadily, patiently finding their place within that sturdy hull. Fathers and mothers led their offspring aboard, the lowing of cattle mingling with the bleat of sheep, the low hum of insects. Above them the sky darkened once more, though these clouds bore no malice, only the final tears of a world set free from rot. Then Enoch beheld the covenant sign, a bow of myriad colors arcing against the receding storm clouds. It shone with every hue of dawn, a promise etched in the firmament that never again would all flesh be swept away by waters. As that brilliant bow gleamed, Enoch felt a warmth suffuse his spirit, assurance that the tapestry of creation had not been severed, but rewoven in threads of mercy and faith. The world's cycle would begin anew, not in violence, but in the quiet covenant between Creator and creature. Yet even as this vision burned bright, Enoch understood his own passage was ending. His mortal tenure had been stretched beyond human measure, shaped by burdens and glories no man should bear. He turned his gaze earthward to his son Methuselah, who knelt among the wreckage, tears mingling with the rain's legacy. In that moment, Enoch's voice rang clear, gentle but unyielding. "Prepare your home. Tell your children every word, for the heavens will open again, and these floods shall return once more, though not to destroy, but to set right." Methuselah rose, eyes wide with awe and sorrow, committing every syllable to memory. He gathered his family close beneath a tattered cloak, passing on Enoch's charge through trembling lips. Fathers pressed their sons' hands, mothers pressed their daughters' cheeks, and every heart burned with a mixture of fear and faith. For the prophecy was no distant riddle, it was an impending truth, a summons to vigilance and hope. As the words settled into the marrow of the earth, Enoch felt the pull of that unseen current once more. The air around him shimmered with divine light, and the wind carried voices beyond mortal hearing, angelic whispers guiding him home. His eyes, reflecting both sorrow for what must be left behind and wonder at what must still unfold, met his son's one last time. He offered a silent benediction, then vanished, drawn skyward into the realm where prophets keep counsel with the eternal. Left upon the silent hill, Methuselah and his kin gazed upward at the thinning clouds, their spirits alight with the gravity of the gift they had received. They would be guardians of the prophecy, storytellers of the flood's purpose and the covenant's promise. And though their patriarch had departed, his words would echo through every generation, an enduring beacon, reminding each soul that even when the world is washed clean, the human heart must remain steadfast in faith and gratitude. Thus, the prophecy of the flood took its place in the annals of memory, a living testament carried in the hearts of survivors. It taught that water, though merciless in its might, could also be holy in its purity, that endings, however terrible, were but preludes to new beginnings, and that humanity's truest strength lies not in the defiance of storms, but in the quiet trust that seeds planted in the mud will one day blossom beneath the sun. From the smoldering ruins of a world undone, Noah emerged like a lone beacon in a storm-tossed sea. Around him lay the remnants of civilization, collapsed towers of stone, forests blackened by reckless fires, rivers clogged with the debris of hubris. Yet through the haze of destruction, his silhouette stood unbowed, an emblem of enduring hope. He carried no banner, bore no sword, and yet his resolve shone brighter than any forge-lit blade. In his steady gaze, one could read the quiet confidence of a man who had walked so closely with the divine that even the fiercest gale could not shake his faith. Noah's hands, thick with calluses, molded the timbers of the ark with patient care. Each beam he selected bore the rings of many seasons, reminders of both abundance and decay. He treated the wood as though it were living flesh, coaxing it into shape with gentle taps of his hammer. Around him the ground was parched, cracked by the relentless sun that glared from a cloudless sky. Yet he built as though rain had already begun to fall, building not against logic, but in obedience to a promise older than memory. His family worked at his side. Shem, tall and thoughtful, measured each plank, ensuring the ark would bear both weight and wonder. Ham, with quick hands and a quicker smile, carved the grooves that would lock beams in place, his laughter echoing like a hymn in the emptiness. Japheth, whose eyes mirrored distant horizons, gathered provisions, grain sealed in jars, oil to kindle lamps, and baskets of painted gourds filled with salted fish. Together they formed a silent covenant to turn prophecy into reality, to weave destiny from the threads of their faith. Neighbors watched from afar, their curiosity laced with scorn. They whispered of madness and mockery, of a man at war with reason. Some hurled stones, others spat curses. Yet when sparks flew from their torches, the flames would falter as though repelled by unseen hands. The ark, rising day by day, seemed to possess a will of its own, a living testament to something greater than any single human heart. In that steadfast structure, they saw a reflection of the one who called them to trust when no cloud darkened the sky. At dawn, Noah stood upon the newly laid deck, breathing in the scent of fresh cedar and the distant promise of rain. He looked to the 4 points of the compass, as if to bless each direction with a silent prayer. His mind reached back through the lineage of prophets. Enoch, carried into the heavens; Methuselah, whose long life bore witness to endurance; and now himself, chosen to guard the future of every living creature. In that moment, he felt the weight of generations settle upon his shoulders, and it did not crush him, but rather steadied him like the keel of a vessel. Word of Noah's undertaking spread beyond his own kin to the creatures of the field and sky. Birds gathered in the scrubby trees, their chirps a tentative chorus. Wild beasts emerged from hidden dens, lions and deer alike stepping toward the open yard, trust shining in their eyes. The call to the ark was not an order, but a summons born from the same voice that had whispered to Noah in the hush of night. 2 by 2 they entered. Elephants tramped alongside timid rabbits, wolves padded beside goats, and serpents slithered past reluctant sheep. A harmony of creation converged within the wooden hull, each life a note in a symphony of survival. Neighbors who once mocked now stood silent, witnessing the procession of creatures without the crack of whips or the ring of chains. They saw in Noah's outstretched hand not mastery born of violence, but leadership born of compassion. In that silent parade, the world glimpsed the possibility of unity of creatures great and small living under the aegis of human kindness. Yet even as their hearts stirred, the skies remained stark and empty, as if awaiting the final summon. Then came the tremor beneath the earth, a low rumble like a growl from the planet's core. Water seeped from hidden fissures pooling in the hollows. Noah closed his eyes and remembered the prophecy. Fountains of the deep, windows of heaven. With solemn grace, he signaled his family to secure every hatch, to tighten every beam with cord and pitch. Inside, lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow across the beasts' waiting faces. The hush within the ark was not fear, but reverent expectancy. And in every heart, whether feathered, furred, or flesh, hope took root. When the first drops fell, the world exhaled. Rain descended in sheets so fierce that in an instant, the hill and valley were veiled in white. The torrents pounded the ark's roof like 1,000 drums, yet the vessel held firm. Within its belly, life stirred in the safe hush of wood and light. Noah stood at a small window, water streaming down the glass, and watched as the deluge claimed the last vestiges of the world he had known. Homes, fields, and cities dissolved beneath the cleansing flood until the murmur of civilization was but a memory. 40 days and 40 nights the storm endured. Waves lashed the hull, each crest higher than the last, yet Noah's faith stood unshaken. He recited the ancient benedictions taught by his father Methuselah, calling upon the mercy that merges judgment with renewal. He remembered Enoch's ascent, the visions of heavens unnumbered, and whispered gratitude for the promise of a covenant written not in fire, but in water. In the ark's wooden heart, he felt the pulse of creation's resilience, a rhythm that would outlast even the fury of the storm. As the waters finally began to recede, the ark came to rest upon a distant mountain's gentle slopes. The roar of the deluge faded into a whispered hush. Noah sent forth a raven, its wings beating against the still drenched air, searching for the shape of land. It returned with nothing upon its beak, but hope glimmered in its dark eyes. Next came the dove, released into the gray expanse. It circled the ark and returned with an olive leaf, a fragile green sign that the earth was stirring awake from its watery slumber. When the dove did not return a second time, Noah knew the world had found its feet once more. He opened the great door and stepped into a reborn dawn. The air carried the scent of wet stone and blooming wildflowers. Hillsides, once submerged, now glowed with tender shoots of new life. The creatures emerged in cautious procession as though greeting an old friend. Noah fell to his knees in gratitude, his hands pressed to the damp earth as tears mingled with the rain's residue. Around him, the symphony of living voices rose in a chorus of renewal. With a trembling voice, he offered the first sacrifice of this new world, a lamb, pure and unblemished, laid upon an altar of rough-hewn stone. Sweet smoke spiraled upward, a silent prayer that ascended like the dove's olive branch. In that fragrant cloud, the promise of a rainbow took the shape of a bow of color, bridging heaven and earth. 7 hues arced across the sky, a covenant signifying that never again would floodwaters sweep away every living soul. It was an artist's stroke of mercy across the canvas of the heavens. Noah stood beside the altar, his face illuminated by the prism of the rainbow's glow. In his mind, he traced the unseen hand that had guided every nail, every plank, every prayer offered in the hush of that trembling world. He saw Enoch's legacy carried forward, Methuselah's long patience fulfilled, and his own simple faith vindicated in the colors of peace painted across the sky. He understood in that sacred stillness that the story would not end on this mountain, but would continue through the seed of every creature that stepped from the ark's doorway. And so, from the ashes of a fallen world, a new chapter began, written in wood, water, and unwavering faith. Noah, the survivor of the storm, carried within him the light of possibility, that even in the darkest hour, obedience and hope can shape the course of history. His life became a living testament to the truth that faith endures when all else is swept away, and that a single heart aligned with the divine can steward creation toward a future bathed in mercy and promise. What if these ancient tales were more than stories told around flickering fires? What if they are mirrors reflecting our own hidden struggles and triumphs? The angels who fell from grace remind us that even those closest to the light can stumble when they forget their purpose. They serve as eternal warnings. That pride, once it takes root, can twist the noblest intent into something destructive. When we allow ambition to eclipse humility, we too become vulnerable to the very shadows we once resisted. And then there are the Nephilim, those giants born of forbidden unions, towering over the land with strength unmatched, yet hearts hollowed by arrogance. They embody the consequences of power unguided by wisdom. In our modern world, when knowledge expands at breathless speed but compassion fails to keep pace, we glimpse our own reflections in their story. Innovation without insight can reshape entire societies, yet if it lacks moral grounding, it can harm as much as it heals. The Nephilim stand as cautionary figures, towering reminders that might without meaning leads only to devastation. Noah, in contrast, shines like a lone lantern amid tempestuous seas. He is the answer whispered into the winds of a dying world, a testament that one faithful soul can carry hope forward. In his simple obedience, we see that heroism need not wear armor or wield power. It can dwell in quiet trust. Even when those around him laughed at his warnings and mocked his preparations, he remained steadfast, building his ark piece by piece on dry ground. He teaches us that courage often looks like perseverance in the face of skepticism, and that faith can be more potent than force. The flood itself is a symbol of both judgment and mercy. Its relentless waters washed away corruption, yet they also carried life into a new dawn. In our own lives, we encounter storms, moments when everything feels submerged under waves of change or loss. But what if those very floods are preparing us for renewal? What if the pain that threatens to overwhelm becomes the crucible through which we emerge stronger, more compassionate, more rooted in purpose? The deluge reminds us that sometimes destruction serves the highest good, clearing away the weeds so fresh growth can take root. And Enoch, he is the bridge, the quiet pilgrim who walks between two worlds. He did not seek glory or divine favor, he simply listened and obeyed. In that open-hearted posture, he glimpsed things few have ever seen: the inner workings of heaven, the balance of justice and grace, the names of souls etched in the Book of Life. He stands as a model for every seeker who yearns to know the heart of the divine. His life invites us to cultivate stillness amid chaos, to lean into the whisper that guides us toward each right choice. Perhaps the greatest lesson of all is that in a world full of noise and clamor, the one who listens may carry the truth. When every voice demands our attention, the quiet soul tuned to a deeper frequency can discern the patterns that bind us. The call to compassion, the plea for justice, the promise of mercy. In practice, this might look like pausing before speaking, opening our hands before grasping, or tending to the needs of another before our own agendas. It is in those small moments that the true power of Enoch's legacy lives on. Reflect for a moment on the choices before you each day. Will you surrender to the roar of self-interest, or will you heed the still, small voice that beckons towards something greater? Will you wield your strengths with humility, or will you risk becoming a giant whose shadow darkens the world? Will you build your own ark, your own sanctuary of faith and hope, so that when life's storms come, you stand ready? And when you emerge from the deluge, will you carry not bitterness, but the seed of a fresh beginning? The mirror of these symbols reflects back our highest calling and our deepest vulnerabilities. It shows us that faith does not demand perfection, but it does require presence, being fully awake to our choices and their consequences. It reminds us that obedience need not be blind adherence, but a courageous alignment with values that transcend fleeting desires. And it assures us that mercy can follow judgment, that reset can follow ruin, and that grace can bridge the chasm between our failures and our redemption. So let these ancient lessons guide you in your own journey. In the hush before dawn, listen for the gentle heartbeat of purpose. In the rhythms of daily life, practice the art of humble strength. In every storm you weather, trust that the ark you build with integrity and compassion will carry you through. And remember that, like Enoch, you need not seek the spotlight to serve the grand narrative of justice and love. Sometimes the quietest voice resonates the longest, echoing across generations until the heart of heaven finds its home in the souls of those who listen well. For centuries, the Book of Enoch lay hidden beyond the fringes of mainstream faith, its words buried as if they carried a spark too volatile for the common keepers of Scripture. Imagine for a moment a text once so revered that early believers quoted its prophecies as readily as the Psalms, a text that stood in whispered alliance with the loftiest visions of the prophets. Yet, in a turn that still puzzles both scholars and seekers alike, Enoch's writings vanished from nearly every canon, disappearing from Protestant and Catholic Bibles as though they had never been written. In the earliest centuries of the Church, Enoch held a place of honor. Church fathers such as Irenaeus and Tertullian referred to his cosmic revelations and divine judgments when crafting arguments against heresy and when expounding on the mysteries that lay beyond human comprehension. The New Testament itself lends Enoch a measure of legitimacy. In the short book of Jude, positioned just before Revelation, its author quotes Enoch directly, invoking his imagery to warn against audacious rebellion. Yet within a few brief generations, these very writings were deemed too strange, too mystical, and were quietly removed. And so we are left to wonder, what exactly made Enoch so dangerous that his voice was cast into the wilderness? Some say the answer lies in the vividness of its narratives. Within its pages, angels descend upon earth not merely as guardians or messengers, but as lovers enthralled by mortal beauty, a portrayal that shatters neat distinctions between the heavenly and the human. From these forbidden unions sprang the Nephilim, titanic beings who towered over the land and unleashed chaos in their wake. Enoch spares no detail in describing their savage might, their insatiable appetites, and the blasphemous arts they imparted to humanity. For an emerging church striving for doctrinal cohesion, such scenes may have felt akin to opening Pandora's box, spilling forbidden knowledge into the hands of unprepared lay readers. Others point to Enoch's elaborate mapping of the heavens as an outright liability. He guides us through multiple firmaments, the first heaven where wind spirits slumber, the second where crystal palaces house angelic hosts, the third where the tree of life spreads its luminous boughs. Beyond that, realms so radiant they defy mortal apprehension. In Enoch's account, divine courts convene in layers of glory. each patrolled by guardian angels and governed by sacred laws unknown even to philosophers or priests. To many church authorities, this intricate cosmography posed a threat. It circumvented the carefully constructed hierarchies of ecclesiastical power, offering readers a direct passport to the very heart of the divine realm. Why rely on human intermediaries when a text could point every curious mind straight to the dwelling place of God? Yet perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the Book of Enoch was its unflinching portrayal of rebellion within heaven itself. It names the transgressors Azazel, Samyaza, and their cohorts, detailing not only their crimes, but the swift and uncompromising justice that befell them. It foregrounds divine judgment as an omnipresent force, reminding every reader that no rank or glory could place one beyond the reach of God's decrees. In a time when institutional authority sought to mediate the relationship between the faithful and the divine, Enoch's bracing reminders of celestial accountability may have felt like a direct challenge, a call to personal vigilance that sidelined the need for human intermediaries. Was the Book of Enoch expelled in the interest of clarity to prevent confusion among the untrained? Or was it a maneuver of control, a means to tighten the circle of acceptable doctrine? The debates of long-ago councils have faded into dust, and the voices that once championed Enoch's revelations have been silenced by centuries of orthodoxy. Yet hidden away in desert caves, a trove of Ge'ez manuscripts preserved by Ethiopian Christians, Enoch waited patiently, awaiting rediscovery. When, in 1773, Scottish explorer James Bruce returned to Europe carrying these ancient scrolls, scholars were electrified. Here was a treasure trove of apocalyptic visions and angelic lore, a text that bridged the gap between Hebrew prophecy and Christian revelation. Translations followed in rapid succession, and for the first time in millennia, Enoch's voice once again filled the halls of academia and the hearts of those thirsting for deeper insight. His words, long silent, challenged complacency. They spoke of titanic battles in the heavens, of mankind's moral extremes, and of a justice that spanned both heaven and earth. Even today, the Book of Enoch resonates with seekers who feel that the standard biblical texts leave too many questions unanswered. It beckons to those who yearn for a panoramic view of the spiritual realm, a view that spans from the depths of human arrogance to the heights of divine mercy. In Enoch's narrative, we find not only a mirror reflecting our own capacity for hubris and violence, but also a guidepost pointing toward humility and obedience. He rebukes the proud, comforts the righteous, and opens our eyes to the hidden mechanics of the cosmos. Reflect for a moment upon the giants bred by celestial desire, their frenzy tearing apart the very fabric of creation. Do they not stand as archetypes for our own technological titans' innovations of stunning power, yet often unleashed without ethical restraint? Consider the layers of heaven that Enoch described. Do they not mirror the layers of knowledge we now inhabit? From the observable universe to the subatomic realm, each frontier patrolled by those who dare to ask, why? And the rebellion of the Watchers, does it not echo in every institution that drifts from its founding purpose, intoxicated by its own might? And so we arrive at the greatest mystery of all. Why were we told to forget him? Why did the keepers of sacred tradition consign this vibrant testament to the footnotes of history? Was it fear of its power to awaken dormant longings for unmediated communion with the divine? Fear of its potential to undermine established hierarchies? Or perhaps a simpler desire for unity of message at the cost of unity of heart? Whatever the motives, the erasure of Enoch's witness reminds us that history is shaped not only by what is remembered, but also by what is silenced. Today, as we hold the Book of Enoch in our hands once more, we are confronted with an invitation to rediscover a dimension of faith that challenges and expands our understanding of both human and divine nature. We can listen to Enoch's piercing warnings about the perils of pride, learn from his lamentations over celestial betrayal, and stand in awe at his visions of the countless firmaments. We can allow His words to stir our imaginations, to awaken our courage, and to sharpen our pursuit of truth in an age of information overload. Ultimately, the question is not whether Enoch's visions should be deemed scripture. The more pressing question is why they were nearly lost and what that loss reveals about the forces that shape our collective memory. As we delve into these once forbidden pages, we must decide for ourselves whether to treat Enoch's revelations as heretical curiosities or as vital signposts on our own spiritual journeys. Perhaps in embracing the full breadth of his testimony, we will uncover truths that not only illuminate the past, but also cast a guiding light upon the path ahead. Because the story of Enoch is more than an ancient drama. It is a call to remember what has been hidden, to question what has been silenced, and to listen for voices that still echo through the caverns of eternity. The tale of Enoch reaches beyond the pages of history. It opens a window into realms unseen, into the heart of rebellion and the promise of redemption. It shows us that not every battle is waged with swords or thunderous proclamations. Some conflicts are waged in the quiet chambers of the soul through the daily decisions we make, the steadfast obedience we choose when no one is watching, and the faith we nurture when doubt presses in from every side. Enoch walked with God not because he was without fault, but because he refused to let go of trust. When the world around him crumbled beneath the weight of corruption and chaos, he listened for the still, small voice that guides the faithful. And in that attentive silence, he found purpose greater than any earthly crown. Perhaps this ancient journey is an invitation for us today to slow our pace, to quiet the clamor of distraction, and to listen once more for whispers of truth. To ask bold questions about the stories we thought we knew, and to remain open to the possibility that there are paths still hidden, corridors of wonder waiting beyond the limits of our understanding. Because the Bible is never merely a collection of texts, it is a journey through the landscape of the human heart, a map drawn in the ink of faith and hope. And some roads, like the one Enoch walked, can transform the way we perceive everything around us. They remind us that obedience is not blind submission, but a courageous choice to align our hearts with something greater than ourselves. If this exploration of Enoch's story has stirred in you a spark of curiosity or awakened something ancient in your spirit, don't let it flicker out in silence. Like this video to help bring these forgotten narratives into the light. Subscribe to Biblical Journey, where the stories once hidden find new life and age-old wisdom speaks to modern hearts. And share your thoughts below. Do you believe that some knowledge was concealed for a reason? As we close this chapter, remember that you are never truly alone on the narrow path. Each step of faith draws you into a fellowship that stretches across centuries, joining you with prophets, dreamers, and seekers who walked before you. Until next time, keep walking with open ears and a brave heart. The road may be winding, but when we listen together, we discover that the journey itself becomes our greatest guide.